Well, good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Erica Wade. I'm the manager for the Office of Small Business Opportunity at Richmond County. I just want to say welcome to everybody on this beautiful, if you're in Columbia, snowy Saturday morning. It's such a pleasure to see so many of you up, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and ready to learn, talk about how to get these governmental contracting bids down and ready to go. Before we get started, I want to introduce the team, our OSBO team. We have Ms. Michelle Rosenthal. Ms. Michelle Rosenthal, she's our business development coordinator. We have Ms. Margaret Jones, Ms. Jones Wave. Ms. Jones, she's our certification and compliance specialist. And we also have Ms. Pamela Green Swinton. Pamela Green, she is our assistant manager. I want to say thank you to Denisha McClary of McClary Consulting. She will be our moderator for today. Just want to go over a few things. I want to share my screen and talk about some upcoming events that OSBO will be hosting over the next few weeks and months. Let me share my screen really quick. So here you go. So the Office of Small Business Opportunity have actually partnered with Google. And as you can see, on January the 25th, we will have a class that's going to be, the instructor for that class is Ms. Shanice Clakley. And Tuesday, January 25th, investors and loan options for business with Google. Also, January the 28th, create a project plan with Google Sheets. On Monday, January 31st, build your professional brand. And guys, these are all free workshops that you can participate in. You can go to our website and be able to click on the links where you'll be able to register for this event. Also, on February the 3rd, OSBO has partnered with the Small Business Development Center. We'll be hosting a class on how to write a business plan. And this is in correlation with our Seeds to Engage small business grant that we're getting ready to roll out in a few weeks. I want to encourage you to watch our website so you'll know exactly when that grant will be rolling out. On February the 16th, Cash App Me. This is a really good one. Tax time is coming up. We want to make sure if you've been using Cash App with your business, we want to make sure you're capturing those expenses or that revenue that you receive through Cash App properly. Coming up starting March, every third Thursday starting March, we will be having our lunch and learns. So please watch our website to know exactly where we're going to be, what topics we're going to be discussing. So right now, tentatively, we have March 17th, April 21st, May 19th, and June 16th. Those will be our lunch and learns. It will be just for an hour. You just come in and we'll have some really good topics that you'll be able to take advantage of when it comes to growing and sustaining your business. With that being said, I want to turn it over to Ms. Oh, one important thing. Like I said earlier, we have our Seeds to Engage grant that will be coming available to small businesses. We hope to roll that out in the next few weeks, but please watch our website, call the office to make sure you're in our database. So when we roll it out, you'll be one of the first to know. And I want to encourage you again to please take advantage of that class, because part of the application process, you will have to submit a business plan. So if you don't have a business plan, I encourage you to take advantage of this class. And also we have the eligibility requirements. You can go to our Richland County YouTube channel where it talks about, it's called Seeds to Engage, and will tell you all the eligibility requirements on how to apply for the Seeds to Engage, grant. Just to let you know that this workshop this morning is being recorded. It will be uploaded to our Richland County's YouTube channel and also on our webpage. So if you want to go back later on, and if you have missed something, you want to hear it again, you'll be able to access this by Monday. We should have this uploaded and ready for you to review. And that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Margaret Jones. She's gonna talk about how to be certified with Richland County Office of Small Business Opportunity. Ms. Jones?
Good morning. I am going to talk about the benefits of being certified with the Office of Small Business Opportunity, and I will share my screen with you. Before I talk about the benefits, I would like to know how many businesses are located by raise of hands, or you can put in the chat box who's located in Richland County. And thank you for that information. First of all, we'll talk about the benefits of certification. You receive maximum exposure via certified SLB directory. You're eligible for projects with the SLBE utilization goal, and our office set goals for our SLBE. Eligible SLBE can be have a prime project or shelter market. Candidates for the business development, training and networking, and we can feature your story on our OSBE website. Eligibility requirements. We have our SLBE, which is a small local business enterprise. Business must be located in Richland County for at least 1 year prior to submission of your application. And if you're not located in Richland County, 25% of your employees that live in Richland County, you can be certified, providing that you provide proper documentation. You have to be independently owned and operated. The small business enterprise must have can have no more than 50 full-time employees, agree and comply with the program requirement, which is enforced by OSBO. And the other one is the ESLBE, which is Emerging Small Local Business Enterprise. Can be in business less than 5 years, has no more than 5 full-time employees, and the annual gross salary has to average over the life of firm is less than $1 million. We have 6 certified industry categories. And the size standard, we have construction, which is 7 million, architectural is 3 million, professional is 3 million, non-professional is 3 million, engineering is 2.5 million, wholesale services is 2.5 million, which is landscaping, caterers, retail, and etc. Our SLB certification program is an online application process. I will put the website in the chat box. Once you're certified by all OSBO and we receive all documentation, it should take about 2 weeks for certification. And the site visits will indicate that a business is located in and legal. You can contact us. Erica Wade is our manager. Pamela Green is assistant manager. Margaret Jones, myself, certification compliance specialist, and Michelle Rosenthal is our business development coordinator. If you have any questions, please contact our office at 803-576-1540. And do you have any questions for me? Anyone? Okay.
So Margaret, I put a question in the chat box. It's Rich Houlihan, and my company is a service disabled, veteran-owned small business. Do I meet the criteria that you're looking for?
What type of business do you have?
Architectural and engineering.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you
Say again, please?
Can you repeat that question for me, please?
Yeah, my question was, my company is a service disabled, veteran-owned small business, certified by the Veterans Administration, and that's who I've up to this point. That is the only entity I've been working for. I saw this opportunity, so I reached out. My experience in the past has been that while service disabled, veteran-owned small businesses aren't normally on the top of the list, they're included in Office of Business Opportunities, small office businesses. So it's a very it's not a universal galactic question. I'm just asking if service disabled, veteran-owned small businesses meet the criteria that the county establishes.
You meet the criteria in the category size standard in the size.
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I will turn it over to Ms. Rosenthal?
Thank you, Margaret. And once again, welcome to everyone. We really appreciate and thank you for joining us on this snowy morning, although I'm loving it. Being from the Midwest area, I love snow, so it is very brightening for me. My responsibility is to introduce our guest speaker. Now, make sure you got all your pens, your papers, your notepads, tablets, everything ready, because it's going to be a wealth of information that you're going to need to jot down as we go along. Denisha McClary, she is near and dear to my heart. I've worked with her, and I can tell you that she means business. If she tells you she's going to do something, that is exactly what she does. She is the founder of McClary Consulting. She's a retired government contract and financial law attorney. She's a certified grant writer, an author, a speaker, an entrepreneur, and an attorney as well. And that's just the summary. She has a history, but that's just the summary of what she does. She's going to tell you a little bit more about everything that she does, and it will blow your lid right off the top. So, Mrs. McClary, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Michelle, for the introduction. Most of you were probably in the session from last week, and so we probably have already been introduced. By show of hands or comments, is there someone who is joining us for the first time this week? Okay. All right. Well, welcome to you guys. This course is a part of a 3-part series. And so in the first part, we did some preliminary information concerning government contracting, but because I guess I have not been properly introduced to you guys, I just wanted to say thank you so much. I am very pleased to be here. I am, in addition to the things that Michelle pointed out, I am also a small business owner, service disabled woman, minority, and I am a government contractor. I'm an active contractor. I was introduced myself to the group last time saying that one of the reasons that I'm qualified to do this class is because, like you, I'm actively pursuing contracts in the government marketplace. In 2021, which was not so long ago, actually, just a few months ago, because we're still into the first month of this new year, I was awarded a contract with the Department of the Army. I have 2 contracts with the state of South Carolina, and I am performing in my capacity today as a government contractor because I was contracted by Richmond County to teach these courses for you. So one of the things I think that makes me unique to learn from is that I face some of the same challenges that you all face. And so it is my unique pleasure to be here, and I'm going to share my screen. First of all, I want to apologize for the background. I am not in my normal office space. I am in what we call the man cave at my house. And this is probably best for this class because I also have 2 small dogs in the house that make a lot of noise when people come to the door. And unfortunately, people are always coming to the door because my husband is the mayor of the town of Andrews, which is where I reside. It's a very small town. And so when people have issues, they knock on the door. And as you can imagine, with the current weather conditions and things that are going on, there are a lot of people knocking. And there are emergency operations going on with respect to if people lose power and that kind of stuff, even though it's not necessarily something that's within the purview of the responsibility of the town, they still come and knock. Okay, so I apologize. I'm wearing my headset for that reason also, and have done everything I can to minimize noise distractions. So because my background is a little busy, would anybody be opposed to me cutting my camera off? Because what we're really going to concentrate on is the slides. Does anybody really need to see my face? Hopefully, no. Okay, great. So I'm going to turn my camera off now, and I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to get started with today's class. Does everyone see my screen? Anyone not see my screen? Ms. Pearson, you have your hand up. Did you need something?
No. No.
Okay, all right. Well, anytime you have any comments during this course, please feel free to come off of mute. If you were in the last course, you know that I'm a person who is a fan of participatory learning. I believe that there's probably something in this material that someone has probably some experience with that they could share that would be helpful to other folks. And if you have any questions, please let me know. You can ask at any time during the presentation. If I'm not able to answer that question for you today, then I will make it my business to get an answer for that question for you, okay? And so I'll either present it in the next course or I'll send it to the Office of Small Business Opportunity so that they can disseminate that information to you, okay? All right. So again, I'm Denisha McClary. I'm the CEO of McClary Consulting, and like Michelle said, I'm a licensed attorney. I am not licensed in the state of South Carolina. I'd like to put that out there because sometimes people confuse business advice with legal advice. And I am not providing legal advice in any capacity. I am not licensed in this jurisdiction. And so please do not confuse any government consulting advice with legal advice, but I am a licensed attorney. I'm a retired U.S. Army judge advocate. And in my capacity as a judge advocate, that's kind of where I amassed all of the knowledge that I have from government contracting. And of course, I've expanded on that since I've been in the marketplace myself. I got my specialty in government contracts and fiscal law from the U.S. Army Judge Advocate General's Legal Center and School. And I was responsible for reviewing contracts in support of Iraq and Afghanistan and a whole bunch of other operations in the Middle East. I also was awarded the additional skill identifier for government contracts. For my former military folks, you know, additional skill identifiers are just a designation that shows that you have some level of expertise in a certain area. And again, I'm an active government contractor. So anyone have any questions so far? All right, this is the agenda for today. Like last class, I don't necessarily intend to read off slides to you. Hopefully today will be a discussion, but today we're gonna basically walk through what the different portions of a government solicitation are. Now, I suspect that there are people in this class who already have experience with going through solicitations. In fact, is it Mr. Richard Holohan? Is that right?
Yes.
Mr. Holohan, you mentioned that you've been working with the Department of Veterans Affairs. I presume
Right.
that means that you are an experienced government contractor.
I
So
I hesitate to use the word experienced, but I can say I have had some experiences contracting with the government. Yeah.
Okay. And so that means that you probably have seen a solicitation or two. Is that right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you'll be able to help with provide information that you might be able to share with the class and anyone else. Are there any other people in this class who have experience with government solicitations? Okay, so I know there was someone last week. I don't know if she's on this class. I believe her last name might have been Green. She may not have been able to join us this week, who worked with the government and was experienced with government contracting. But we went over an overview of what solicitations were last week. Can anyone tell me what a solicitation is?
Well, I'll make a stab at it. Of course, if you have the authority to issue a contract and to obligate whatever government entity you're representing, whether that's the federal government, the state, the county, municipal, you will go. It needs to be advertised, so there's a full and open competition, and it's fair to all. And so it'll be posted somewhere that is available to the bidding public, so to speak, and you'll identify what it is that you want to do. Most of the time, you'll include a rough government estimate of what you think the cost will be. Sometimes you don't, but almost always I've seen, particularly in my case, because doing architectural engineering work. And then there'll be then the government, the contracting entity will tell you how they want you to respond. What is the format of your response? Is it just a simple letter format? Is it a fairly lengthy proposal? When after I retired from the Marine Corps, I worked for Raytheon, and we would put out proposals. There were hundreds of pages long. There'd be multi books of gosh, I don't even want to go back and think about all that stuff. So the point is, you have to be able to contract you have to be able to obligate whoever it is you're representing, whatever level of government it is. You need to identify your requirement. You need to post it so that entities can respond to that. And you're trying to get the best value you can for whoever it is you're representing. And there'll usually be a fairly short, not too long, not too short. There'll be a period of time for you to go ahead and ask questions. Then there'll be a deadline to respond, and you press from there. I do have some recent experience with a prime contract I designed for the Bronx VA Medical Center, and I'll hold that to later to talk about RFIs and things like that.
Okay. So
If I'm talking too much, you tell me, okay?
Well, thank you so much for that. I mean, that was a very thorough, big picture overview for folk. Is there anyone in here who has, well, I'm going to say if you were in here last session, then we talked about what a solicitation was, right? Solicitation, like Mr. Holohan just said, that is essentially how the government tells you what they want. So if the government is going to offer a contract, then they are going to issue a document that tells you exactly what they want, right? And in that document, it's also going to tell you everything you need to be able to formulate your bid or your proposal, right? Now, Mr. Holohan, you mentioned that you made reference to the fact that there may be a dollar value limit. Are you talking about in your proposal, or are you talking about in the government solicitations?
In the government solicitation, I think generally what they try to do, again, I'm looking for architectural engineering work, and they'll almost always include, well, we think the construction value of this project will be between $5 and $10 million, and that tells you what your fee could be. Generally speaking, for an A&E, it works out to be around 10%. So that's like a $500,000 job if you win it. There was one I was looking at a couple of weeks ago was for like $125,000, and so the fee for that is like $12,500, and so you have to, and it wasn't local. Would have had to have gone to Augusta, Georgia, not really that far, but at any rate, so there's information in there that helps you decide whether you should bid, no bid on that contract.
Exactly, because that solicitation should tell you everything that you need to formulate your bid. Like Mr. Holohan was saying, based on his industry, there is information that he needs concerning construction value to help him roughly calculate what a reasonable fee would be for those services. Now, what if they forgot to put that information in a solicitation? What could you do? Does anyone know? Anyone have any suspicion about what they could do? Miss Tony, do you have your hand up?
Look at a previous one.
It's just like what Mr. Holohan said, that time period where it's a short time period where you can respond, and what you do is if there's a question you have about it, it could be you asking the question in the format that they choose, and during that time period, if it's some additional information, it's shared with everyone who's also interested in bidding. It could have been something that was left off by the government agency, or it could have been just a general question. And then during that time period, they'll compile all of your questions, and then they will make an addendum if they have to, and put the responses of the questions in there.
Correct. So solicitations, like I said, this is going to tell you everything that you need to know. It's even going to tell you that if there's something in here that you think you need to know that we don't provide, this is how you can ask it, okay? You can contact us. They will give you a point of contact or tell you how to submit your questions. And to be fair to everybody, because if you have that question, especially if it's a question that's, say, based on your industry, or if there's something that is confusing, or they need to clarify in the solicitation, if you have that question, then other people probably also have that question, right? So to be fair to everybody, they're going to take that question, they're going to answer that question, and then they're going to publish that information so that any prospective bidder has access to it. Now, there are generally 3 types of solicitations, and we're going to talk about those 3. And I know Mr. Holohan already talked about a proposal and an invitation for a bid. And I think I mentioned in the last class that sometimes the government will just solicit information from you. And so we're going to talk about those things, okay? So what is a request for a proposal? This is what a request for a proposal is. It's essentially the form that the government uses to request the bid. Now, again, I don't like to read slides, so I'm going to give you a few seconds to review the slide and ask any questions. And what you want to pay attention to is the stuff that I've highlighted specifically. This is the kind of thing that you really need to understand when you are submitting a bid for the government and a request for a proposal. That if you follow the form for the proposal, because again, the solicitation is going to tell you exactly how you have to submit that proposal, exactly what should be in that proposal. If you don't put the stuff in there that they say should be in there, what did we say in the last class? That makes your bid what? Anyone?
It would make you non-responsive.
It would make you non-responsive. So when the government requests information, they tell you exactly how you're supposed to submit that information. They tell you the form that that information is supposed to be received in. And remember, for a bid to be considered and for a bid to be eligible for an award, it has to be responsive to the questions that the government asks, right? So this is a request for a proposal. Now, generally, this is, it doesn't matter if it's a state request for a proposal or a federal request for a proposal. This is generally how you can understand a request for a proposal. The reason I make this distinction is because we're also going to go through the different sections of a request for a proposal for the federal government. And then I'm going to show you the sections for request for a proposal for the state of South Carolina. You'll be able to see how some of those things are similar, you know, and how the different organizations have things organized. Now we're going to spend the first half of this class, the first hour, going through these things, and then we're going to take the second half to look at some examples. Because remember, we had homework from the first class. Who remembers the homework from the first class?
It was about industry standards and pricing.
Industry standards and pricing. Did anyone find out for their industry what, if you are a janitorial service, did you find out for your industry how you generally would be able to find pricing for janitorial services? What about, I think I saw comeback cleaners on here. Comeback cleaners, are you on?
Yep, we're here.
Okay. Were you able to do the homework from the first class?
Yes and no. So I've gotten so much mixed reviews and like different information. And it kind of just depended on, it changes with how often you're doing something and whether, so it didn't really give me information for bidding on a one-time job. It was more so of like recurring services.
Okay. But there was a gentleman in the first class who I think also had some insight into pricing for your service. Is that gentleman on? I think the two of you spoke in the last class.
Yeah, I'm here and I came up with the same conclusion. It's so broad to where it's almost overwhelming. It's like you have to figure out the cost, your overhead personally,
Right.
and then just price it just price the job accordingly.
Right. Okay. So we're going to talk about those things when we start to look at actual proposals in the second half of the class. But this is why we're going to go through this this stuff so that you understand kind of the call for the questions, how the government is requesting the information to help you formulate your proposal format. And then the last class, which will be next week, will go more specifically into pricing, okay? So this is a government, this is another form of a solicitation, which is an invitation for a bid. I made some notes here. There's a difference between documents that might be required for these types of contracts from federal and state, although they are going to be very similar when we look at the example. So I said on here that there are some documents that the contractor must sign. For the federal government, there are 2 standard forms that are pretty frequently used for government contracts. And then the state of South Carolina has an online cover page and a page 2 of their solicitation. And those pages essentially have the same effect or perform the same function as the 2 standard forms that the government uses for different types of bids. Okay. We're going to look at those things. I know right now it seems like, like this stuff seems like Greek to folks who haven't seen it or haven't, at least gone through and pulled any solicitations. Last week, I provided websites and information, and we talked about where you could go to find solicitations. Did anyone go look at any of the government websites to look at solicitations after the last class?
I did. And what was, I guess, kind of discouraging for me, I saw that there was a lot of, it was asking, the one I looked at wanted 5 references for similar size jobs, for square footage wise that you had already completed. And then it looked like you had to be in business for a certain amount of time. It was just a lot of requirements that didn't apply to someone who's never gotten a government contract. Or it didn't apply to a business that wasn't, it didn't have longevity or, things like that. So it was kind of discouraging when I did go look.
Was that for federal or state, or did you find that in both?
That one was a City of Columbia solicitation.
Okay. So we'll talk about that too when we go through the different sections of the solicitation, because remember, even if you don't necessarily have the experience as a business, you can consider the experience of the principals of the business who may have experience, in different commercial, ventures, or who may have certain training and that kind of stuff. And so we'll talk about that as well. Okay.
Your past performance doesn't have to be in government contracting. It can be
Right.
any past performance.
Right. It doesn't need to be government contracting, and it doesn't need to be experience necessarily for the business itself. If it's a new business, the principals who are going to work on that contract may have that experience in some other arena. And so you'll be able to try to bring that experience to bear in your request for proposal, in your bid package. You just need to understand how to present that information. Okay.
I have a question?
Yes.
So I'm in construction, but I have the janitorial, just like Miss from the combat cleaning. So does that mean I have experience? Because I am a QC guy for my job. I am a foreman. I have different titles with my job. So I've actually dealt with cleaners on previous jobs and had to go out there and show them what needed to be cleaned, check out the work for it. Does that count as me having experience or no?
So it may count as having experience depending on what the specific solicitation requires of the contractor. Remember, the government is going to tell you what they're looking for. If you have experience supervising jobs of that nature, then you will be able to present that information to the government and say that you have experience because you've been directly, had direct oversight of these types of things, and spell out what that information is. Okay. So whether or not, I can't just give you a blanket answer, because all of these things are determined by what the government is looking for and what your specific experience is. But definitely you want to pull from that full range of experience that you have, what would be applicable to that situation. Okay.
Yep.
And now we talked about a request for quote or request for information. In the last class, I talked about We went over how you get properly registered with the federal government, with the state government, and then the Office of Small Business Opportunity talked about what was required to be properly registered as a contractor with the County of Richland. Remember, if you are properly registered, remember there was a right at the end of your registration, specifically with the federal government, I talked about there was a search tool that government contracting officers use. And a lot of people omit this in their registration. With respect to my clients, I do not consider them properly registered if they are not properly registered in that search tool, because some of the requests for information, remember I told you that's where the government can see you, right? So sometimes if you are properly registered, the government, specifically I'm talking about the federal government now, will reach out to you. You don't necessarily have to reach out to them, or you're not necessarily responding to a solicitation that was published in the public if you are properly registered. And I'm going to show you an example of 2 times that happened to me between April and June in 2021. And I have examples of that, but that would qualify as a request for information. Okay. A request for information is not a binding contract. So if you remember the request for proposal and the invitation for a bid, when you submit that information to the government, if the government accepts your proposal or your bid, and you've already signed those forms and submitted them, then once the government accepts it, that's a binding contract, and they'll just issue notice that a contract, has been issued. But a request for information or even a request for a quote doesn't have the same effect. So that's the primary difference. Okay. Anyone have any questions about this?
I do.
Yes.
How do you know you're not being spammed? Because when I first registered in SAM, I was getting all kind of quote unquote requests for proposals, and turned out they would use the name of some public agency information, but like the email wouldn't line up, and if I hadn't done my due diligence, I would have been responding to someone else. So how do you make sure that you're not being spammed?
I think that you just answered that question. You have to do your due diligence, because we even talked about how there are different places that you can go. If you just Google registration in SAM, you may click on a website and think that you're going there to do your registration in SAM, but this website actually wants to charge you money for these things, right? So who is the request coming from? You have to do your due diligence. With respect to the request that I'm going to show you in the next hour that I received directly from government contracting officers, it was clear that it was coming from the government contracting office. Okay. So if you are receiving random information after you register on some of these websites, because a company that once you register in SAM or in a government website, that information is essentially public information. Anyone can go and see a list of folks who are properly registered to do business with the government. Remember, that's a public database. It's free, and you can search. When contracts are awarded, the companies that receive those contracts, that information is public information, right? So that means that there are a lot of people out there who have an interest, maybe a financial interest, in contacting those people and trying to solicit business. And some of the ways that they do that, if you're not experienced or if you're not certain how the government process runs, you may think, oh, I have to pay this person a fee in order to get access to the information about this contract, when in actuality, government solicitations are already public information. And so you want to always be careful about that. And you definitely want to check the source.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to go through what our RFP format is for the federal government. But for those who might be experienced or who have seen a federal request for a proposal, can you tell me some of the things that you might remember that were in that proposal? Remember, we said a request for a proposal is a solicitation, and a solicitation tells you everything you need to know, right? But does anyone have any specific experience with federal government proposals?
I'll speak up. I did kind of mention them before, but the first thing that's going to be in there, who's the contracting agency?
Right.
And almost always it'll list the contracting officer, maybe a contracting specialist, but almost always a contracting officer. and where where they are from, whether it's Lexington or the Bronx or wherever. It will talk about, are there any set asides, and they do that real early, like since I pursue only Department of Veterans Affairs work because I want to give back to my fellow veterans. The VA, all of their work is set aside for service disabled veteran-owned small businesses. So there'll be some sort of discussion in there about that.
And can I just ask, because we said there are three different forms of, three major forms of government contract solicitations. How do you even know it's a request for a proposal? And not a invitation
well,
for a
actually,
bid.
I mean,
It'll
it
say
actually,
that.
Exactly.
yeah, I'm sorry, I
Mhm.
should have, yeah. It actually says what it is. It says,
Right,
this
exactly.
this is a request for, the government is seeking, it's very clear, like the first line, that they're saying what it is that they want. And then, then they get into the details. Is it set aside? What's the scope of work? What do we think the size of the project is? How we want you to respond, when we want you to respond, and how you ask us questions. And the solicitation will be amended as needed if new information comes up or they want to add some more information or whatever that may be.
Yes, exactly. So request for proposal, like it's important to understand how it's broken down and the different sections for it, specifically for the federal government, because these are some of the longer solicitations, right? A lot of times I have people contact me and they are just so overwhelmed by the solicitation itself that they don't know where to start. This happens both with the federal government and with the state government, because it can be a 40, 50-page document depending on the contract requirements. There's all types of references to things. Remember, I mentioned in the last class, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, or the FAR. So there's all types of references to legal clauses and all kinds of things. And sometimes people don't even know what it is the government is looking for. I've had people call me and said, hey, I've gone through the solicitation, and based on the title of the solicitation, because in section A, it's going to tell you, like Mr. Holohan was saying, it's going to give you the basic information. It may even have the title of the type of requirement. Like it may say, some sort of deliverable or some sort of service that they're looking for. But in order for you to even know whether or not your company is qualified to perform that service, you're really going to have to look at the statement of work, because the statement of work is going to tell you specific things. It's going to dictate most of your proposal, right? So section C is the statement of work. I have people who are like, oh, I went through the proposal, the request for proposal, but I don't even understand what it is the government is looking for. And chances are it's because there's a lot of different sections, and it's a lot of information, and they don't know where to focus. And so I made this sheet. Remember, all of the slides that I present in these courses are going to be made available to you after the class as maybe like a cheat sheet for you as you're starting your government contracting journey. I know in the last class, most people had not already started in government contracting. But when you start to look at proposals, specifically like the federal government request for proposals, it is a very good idea to understand how these things are broken down into different sections. Remember, we also talked about the fact that you may offer a service, and it may be the type of service that the government is seeking, right? However, the government may be looking for people who have a top secret security clearance, right? So even though you can provide these services generally, there may be some requirements in that request for proposal that right at the onset that you're not able to meet. And so because it takes so much time and sometimes resources for small businesses to really go through and generate a proposal, it is important to understand where to go to look for critical information, because it may not even be worth your time to sit and try to figure out the pricing, because you may be able to easily identify the fact that you're not able to meet some of the requirements for the contract. And I see Miss Keach has her hand up. Yes, Ms. Keach.
So with regards to what you just said, set asides, special clearance, so forth and so on, do you recommend, if you have the time and it's something you're interested in, to go ahead and submit it? Because I have heard that if, let's say, the set asides don't apply, let's say if it's set aside for woman owned and no woman owned businesses apply, that they will go back and look at the solicitations that they do have that were not for the set aside. Is that correct information?
I would say this. I don't know that that's always correct, because one of the problems with that is that they limited the scope. So they may wind up, if they don't get enough responsive bidders, reissuing the solicitation and opening it up, because when they limit the scope of who is an authorized bidder, some people who would otherwise be qualified won't bid on the contract. And so generally that would require them to have to reissue the solicitation to get additional bidders. But if you would otherwise qualify, especially because if you have the time and you have the resources, remember in the last class I said, the only way to get better at formulating bids is to bid. And also when you don't get a bid award, you are entitled to contact the contracting office and say, hey, I bid on this thing and I was not selected. I would like to get like a back brief. I would like to sit with you and talk about my bid, because it helps you to improve your bids going forward, right? So if there were things that maybe they found non-responsive, but it wasn't obvious to you that it was non-responsive, the contracting officer may tell you, well, this bid was non-responsive because of X, Y, and Z, right? So that's one of the ways to improve your bids. And also, if you have the time and the resources, practice always makes for a more perfect bidding process. So yes, if you have the time and the resources and you would otherwise qualify and you want to bid anyway, then you may submit your bid. I think that the government would likely still reissue the solicitation though, because they may have unfairly limited their bidders. But yes, by all means. Mr. Holohan?
Yeah, just for, maybe just pertains to the kind of work that I'm doing, but I often see the federal government put out a source of sought. And what they're doing is say, we intend to have a contract to do some sort of work at some location. Is anybody out there interested? And, they're looking to see if there's any, DBEs or those kind of entities that are interested, because if they find that there are, I think it's 2 or more or 3 or more, they have to go with that set aside category. But if not, then they can make it full and open.
Right. And so we talked about that in the last class, and on the slides when I was talking about the 3 major categories of solicitations. A source of sought is kind of a request for information. Remember I said that if you're properly registered and the government can see you, they will reach out to you sometimes. And remember I said you don't necessarily have to have your certifications to self-certify as like a woman-owned business or a small business in SAM, because there is a place for you to self-certify, right? Well, they may reach out to you and say, hey, we're looking to see if we can set this aside to small business. And so we see that you're registered as a small business in this industry, and we're trying to see if you would be interested in this. Or we've already determined that we're going to set this aside as, for small business. And, before they may just reach out to you for information. And so that's what I'm going to show you on in the next hour when we start looking at solicitations and the ways that contracting officers communicate. But yes, absolutely. The government will reach out to folks and say, hey, and in addition to reaching out to you, like Mr. Holohan said, they will still publish that information publicly so that other people who they may not see in the contracting database has the opportunity to discover that the government is looking for information. But if they are able to see you, they will often send the request directly to you. And so that's another type of request for information. Anyone have any questions about anything on this slide? And remember, this slide will be made available to you. Hopefully you can use it and it'll help you go through a federal request for proposal, which is one of the most daunting, I think, because the federal bidding process is specifically because oftentimes this is for like high level technical information. It can take a lot of time to put together a very responsive proposal, and it can, small businesses often, especially startups, often don't have a lot of time because they don't have a lot of resources. So you want to make sure you understand to go to key areas, and I've highlighted some of them here, that may tell you whether or not this is even something that you want to pursue, okay? Any other questions? Okay, so we're going to talk about the invitation for a bid format, and I'm specifically going to focus on the state of South Carolina. This is my limited experience. Maybe someone else may have a different experience, but most of the bids that are available through the South Carolina procurement website, I believe, are IFBs, which are invitations for bids. Is there anyone in here who is a contractor with the state of South Carolina or who has experience either reviewing or bidding on state of South Carolina contracts? No? Ms. Keach?
I've submitted one.
Did you? How was the bidding process for you?
It was a lot easier than the federal. I will say that. I did not know when I submitted my South Carolina bid that what you just spoke about of, why I didn't get the bid. I didn't contact them within that time frame to find out why I didn't. And I haven't submitted one since, but I will the next time.
Okay, so yes, so always take the opportunity. And this is the case for federal contracts. It is my experience that it is the case for state contracts in South Carolina, but I have even submitted a bid to a county in South Carolina where I was the next responsive bidder for a contract. I did not get the contract, but I would have been, if the contractor had not been able to perform, I would have been the person that they would have called next. But I did call, and the county purchasing officer also made themselves available and went through everything with me. And so I was just kind of edged out by pricing in that particular contract. But it's important to understand these things because sometimes people don't know, but each of these experiences helps you to refine your bid, okay? So for IFBs in the state of South Carolina, there's a cover page and a page 2, which generally accompanies even the request for proposals for the state of South Carolina. I have seen that these documents attached. These documents are equivalent to the SF-33 or SF-1449 with respect to a lot of the administrative data that is contained. And also, you are required, as the contractor submitting the bid, you are required to sign that document. Okay, so just like the SF-33 or SF-1449. So when you submit an invitation for a bid, when you respond to an invitation for a bid with your bid in South Carolina and you sign that document, that also has the same effect, just like in federal contracting, of saying that if the government accepts this is a binding contract. Okay. Section 3 of the invitation for a bid in the state of South Carolina is your scope of work. So if you're looking at one, and they can also be kind of lengthy, although I have found them not to be as daunting as federal solicitations. But they can be 20, 30 pages or more, depending on the specific requirement. Even one of the ones that we're going to look at, which is a janitorial contract, can be 20, 30 pages or more. So it's not necessarily something with a lot of technical specifications, but there's a lot of information to be put into these things. And so you just want to make sure that you understand what that information is and you understand how you must respond. Remember, the government in its solicitation, regardless of the form, is going to tell you exactly what they're looking for. They're going to tell you exactly how to respond. And any other questions that you need to know should also be in that solicitation. And if it's not, you just need to ask, okay? Anyone have any questions about IFBs for format for South Carolina? Okay, I'm gonna take I see we're at 10:57. So I'm gonna just go ahead and insert a break here. When we come back, we're gonna actually look at some of these solicitations and we're gonna look at some examples. And then we're gonna take these examples and some of that industry work that we were doing before when we're talking about finding out how much to bid, you know, specific for your industry and stuff. We're gonna try to apply that to some of these solicitations, okay? To help us in preparation for preparing a bid for the next session. Anyone have any questions before we break? Okay, so we will come back at 11:10.
While we are taking the break, I would encourage, we had some folks that came on during the presentation. So if you hadn't already done so, I want to encourage you to just put your business name, your contact information, maybe just a little bit of information about your business in the chat. So that way we'll know exactly who we have on the call. It may be somebody who's on here that can utilize your services. So make sure, take this time out to just give a shout out to your business. Just drop it in the chat. Like we said, we will make the slides available and also a copy of this link available to each and every one of you that's on the call today. Also, for those of you that was not able to be on the call on Monday, we will send out a copy of the PowerPoint presentation from last week's class, so you'll be able to read up on what she talked about. And also, we'll send out a copy of this PowerPoint, so you'll be able to review and be ready for the third class that we have coming on next Saturday. We also want to encourage you to just kind of watch our website. So based on how the weather is for next week, we may be back in person again as we previously started last week, or we may resort to another online class. So like I said earlier, go ahead, give a shout out about your business in the chat. Make sure you put your phone number, how we can get in contact with you while we're waiting on Ms. Denisha to come back. Also, if you have any questions based on some of the things you may have heard in the slide earlier, go ahead, we're monitoring the chat box. We'll go ahead and try to answer those questions for you in the chat while we're waiting. If we don't have any other questions, we'll be back in a few minutes. So go ahead, give a shout out to your business. Thank you. I see we have Priority Properties in the chat box. I see Gibson Grass Master Landscaping, Suds and Such, E&F Logistics LLC, Farmer National LLC, Dumpsters and Truck and Junk Removal. We see Helping Hands Cleaning and her contact information, and they do commercial cleaning. Also, if we have any certified SLBEs that's on the call, go ahead and put your name and put in the parentheses so we'll know that you're here with us also. We have Pamela Butler. Good morning, Pamela Butler, Realtor. She Fix It, LLC Credit Repair Specialist. Good morning. Let's see who else we have. GLK Enterprise Group. Thank you. E&F Logistics. See who else we have. Make sure you put your email address or your website address also when you put your business name, your contact information in case anybody wants to get in contact with you. Maybe even just a small little snippet about what it is that your business does. We see Deborah Pearson, GNP Construction, Holland and Environmental LLC. She does demolition, asbestos, inspections, air monitoring. GLK, she does transportation and logistics. Sharon Mills Pickney, CEO, founder of At the Table LLC. She's certified health coach, certified in cooking and nutrition instructor. She's got her phone number, 803-238-5786. We have Veronica Johnson, TG Trucking. She does hauling, dump trucks, demolition, asphalt, well drilling, clearing and grading. And she's got her email address that's in the chat box. So I thank you so much for utilizing this time to promote yourself, to promote your business. We have MZW Roadside Service. Travis, go ahead and put your information as far as how we can get in contact with you into the chat also. And Mr. Farmer from Farmer National is a SLBE. Thank you, Mr. Farmer. We have any other SLBEs on the call? We talked about SUDs and such. And if you need any other information, if you need to find out, or if you want to have one-on-one certification consultation with our office, please feel free to reach out to us. Our number 803-576-1540, or you can just email us at osbo@richlandcountysc.gov. And you can just say, hey, I want to know how can I be registered with Richland County to become a certified SLBE. Again, our phone number 803-576-1540. I see we have Capital City Striping. Mr. Romeo Boston, make sure you put your contact information in case somebody wants to get in contact with you. You'll know how to reach you, put your website. Does your business have to be in Richland County to be an SLBE? Yes, you have to be located in Richland County, but if 25% of your employees live in Richland County, we can still certify you. So make sure Lisa contact our office on Monday. Ms. Margaret Jones will be available to speak with you, 803-576-1540. Ms. McClary, she dropped her website in the chat box. So if you need to reach out to Ms. McClary, she's got her Zoom link there.
Actually, I dropped a SBA resources class that I held. In fact, I believe Mr. Frank Anderson, who is a friend to the Office of Small Business Opportunity, who is also a friend to McClary Consulting, gave a presentation for McClary Consulting in 2020, I believe, and that is a link to that presentation on SBA resources. Mr. Frank Anderson works with the Small Business Administration, and he is a lending specialist. So that's great information for small business.
Thank you. I see Ms. Veronica Johnson. She's a SLBE, and she's also certified with the City of Columbia as a CDBE, and also a certified DBE. And we have Mr. Melvin Green, Green Tree Transportation. Thank you, Mr. Boston, for dropping your contact information into the chat box. Did everybody put their info in? Did I miss anybody? Do we have any other questions? If you have any questions for Ms. McClary, go ahead and drop it in the chat box also. We'll make sure that those questions are answered before the workshop is done. Sheila said the link is asking for a passcode. Which link are you referring to?
She's referring to the link that Ms. McCleary posted for us to watch the SBA resources, but it's asking for a passcode.
Okay, I'll get you the passcode. I just have to go back and find the registration information. I'll send the passcode because that's a great resource and it's free information from the Small Business Administration. And so I want to make it available to as many people as possible who are interested. So.
We have Kimberly Tony, Pro Construction Services LLC Construction. She does construction and project management. She's got her information, inspect construction, residential and commercial sites, and manage construction projects, erosion control inspections. Thank you, Ms. Tony, for your information. And I hope you guys are taking note in case if there's anybody on the call that you may need to get in contact with to potentially partner with, to bid on some projects that you may have seen either with the City of Columbia, Richland County, Lexington County. This is your time now. This is almost like an outreach. That's why I asked you guys to put all your information on here so we can kind of get to know each other. This is an online outreach time. So it is 11:09, and I think Ms. McCleary will be starting in about a minute. And once again, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. And don't forget, next week will be our the last week for this 3-part series. And on February the 3rd, we'll be talking about how to do a business plan. So if you don't have a business plan, I would encourage you to please sign up for this workshop. It will be really enlightening. We've partnered with SBDC, and we'll be providing that information for you. If you have any questions, again, our number 803-576-1540.
Okay. Mr. Holohan, did you have a question or was your hand up from previous?
I think that was from previous.
Okay, great. All righty, so I think everyone, we're back now, or at least everyone should be back now. And I hope that the most boring part of the presentation is over and now we can get down to some nitty gritty stuff and some fun stuff. And during the break, you heard Ms. Wade saying that this is an opportunity for outreach. I said this in the first class presentation too, when we were all in the same room. Whenever you are with people who have, small business owners who are pursuing things similar to yourself, it's a great time for networking. It's a great time to find people to partner with for things. And you may also find resources for information that will help you along the way, because we all have different experiences in business and different experiences, in the government contracting arena. And so I think it's important to always share those things. So anytime you want to participate, anytime you want, have something to share, please feel free to do so. I'm of the opinion that that kind of helps us all learn. And so I want to start back now because we talked about requests for information. And I said that in this portion of the class, we were going to look at some examples of that I'd received. And as a result of being, quote, properly registered in the federal government's system for award management. And I want to show you those examples. I don't like to read to people, but I understand that this is a bit of an eye chart. So I know I'm sharing it on the screen and everyone should have access to this on the screen, but these are 2 different emails that I received. These are not emails that I received because I solicited anything from the government contracting office. Now, we talked about requests for information. These are types of requests for information. These contracts were both contracts that the various government contracting offices had, and because they saw me registered in SAM, and again, remember I said when you register in SAM, you are not limited to the NAICS codes that you can use. Remember what the NAICS codes were? Who remembers NAICS codes from last time?
I wasn't here last time, but North American
Industry
Industry
classification
Classification, yeah, standard.
system, right? Who looked up their NAICS codes since last time? Anybody? Well, even if you haven't had an opportunity to look up your NAICS codes, or if you already had NAICS codes, some of you are already on your journey for government contracting and have been registered in various systems, and you've already identified what your NAICS code is for the specific services or products that you offer. Remember that you are not limited to 1 or 2 or even 3 NAICS codes. You can have unlimited NAICS codes associated with your business, you know, if those are services or goods that you're trying to provide to a government agency. And when you register in SAM with the federal government specifically, you can have an unlimited number of NAICS codes. And so in addition to government contracting and teaching webinars and seminars, I also partner with other businesses, other small businesses, and I will bring them on as contractors and do other types of work as well, okay? So I do not have just one industry for a NAICS code. And remember I said that if you were properly registered, the contracting officers can see you. And when they are publishing these public requests for information, if they see you in the system, they will reach out directly to you as well. So on the left side, or the purple writing, this is a solicitation for information. It's a request for information where there's an attached statement of work, and it is from the 42nd Contracting Squadron on Maxwell Air Force Base. They were conducting, quote, market research. And as you can see, they identified me by NAICS code based on my registration in SAM. Remember how we said request for information do not mean that there's a binding contract because you submit that information? You see that on the second half of that email, it says, at this time, I'm only conducting market research and no contract will result from this email. But they still send me a statement of work, and they still say, hey, please respond no later than this date and tell me whether or not you are able to fulfill this requirement in this statement of work. Okay. Now, this specific requirement was for teaching courses at the Air Force's Judge Advocate General's Legal Center and School. Remember, I'm a retired Army JAG officer. I got my master's of the law in government contracts and fiscal law at the U.S. Army's Judge Advocate General's Legal Center and School. So this is what this specific contract was reaching out for. They were doing market research. They saw me registered in SAM. And because I'm properly registered, where they could actually see me and see my small business, and they did a search. Remember, I said that they will search by NAICS codes. And so you want to make sure your NAICS codes properly identify all of the services that you offer. They reached out directly to me. Now, this request for information was also publicly published on the System for Award Management website, SAM, right? So they also published this. But if I were not, say, if I didn't have some means to be notified when these types of things are published, and if I wasn't actively looking for these types of things, this would have been a contracting opportunity, although it's just a request for information, that I wouldn't have been aware of. Now, what happened after this request for information? I responded in accordance with the instructions and based on the statement of work. And they then publicly announced that they are going to turn this into a contract. And so then I also received a response from my communication. I communicated directly with this contracting specialist, submitted my response. And when they decided to publish it, they put it back, you know, they sent me a notice and said, okay, now you can submit a bid. Because from their request for information, they determined that this was a contract that they could set aside for small business. Mr. Holohan, I think, alluded to this earlier, right? That sometimes they'll be asking for information because they're trying to determine, do I have enough small businesses who are available to offer this service? And if they do, then they will turn that into a contract. And that's what happened in this case. Now, that was in April. And as you can see, somebody said, how do you know you're not being spammed? Well, you see this email address, samantha.millington@us.airforce.mil. And you see the contact information, you see the person it came from. Also, there was a government statement of work attached to the email, to the solicitation. So that's how I knew that this was legit, right? Now, the one to the right, a similar thing, and this was for a different type of job. And I received this request because of the way that my NAICS codes are registered in SAM. Now, I did not respond to this job because this job was located in another state. And even though I can potentially provide that service in South Carolina, I am not able to provide it in the other state, right? So when you look at the statement of work, it's going to tell you where they want you to perform. And if you know you're not able to perform where they want you to perform, then it's not even worth your time, or at least I didn't deem it worth mine. Yes, ma'am, Miss Tony.
I have two questions. One is, when it's not worth your time, do you just respond and just like you should you respond and just decline, or just not say anything?
So you can respond to just decline, because one of the things that I teach my clients, so I did not respond in the affirmative. I did decline. But one of the things that I teach my clients, and one of the things that I do for clients, is help to establish relationships with local contracting offices. Now, we talked about having, well, I'm not going to give you the answer. Who remembers the sheet, the 1 to 2 page sheet?
The capability statement.
The capability statement. So we went over capability statements last time, and I showed you examples of capability statement. And in fact, in the presentation last time in the slides, there's 2 examples of those in those slides, right? So one of the things that you want to do is make sure that you have capability statements. When contracting officers reach out to you, you can also reach out to them directly unsolicited and provide your capability statement. Remember, I talked about open houses that they routinely have, especially federal agencies have open houses at least once or twice a year, where they will invite contractors in to talk about the different requirements that they have coming up that are going to be, contracts that are going to be opening up. And so you want to make sure you have a good relationship with them. You want to make sure that they see you in a good light. So if you receive a direct solicitation, I think it is polite to respond, even if you are declining.
Right, because this particular one is right in the line of what I do, or what I'm familiar with. So when they're asking for a market research quote, so basically what they're asking for is, what would you quote for that particular work, and then basically submit your capability statement, or capability statement showing that you have experience in it. And that's basically what they're asking for. Is that what this is?
No. So
Okay.
That's not necessarily what they're asking for. They're not necessarily asking for a quote. What they are asking for, they will tell you. If you look at this particular one, the one that's in line with your industry, it says, I'm working on market research. Please answer the following question with either yes or no. If you answer yes, please provide a market research quote or other supporting information showing your capability of completing the work. So in that case, then if you are capable of performing in accordance with this performance work statement, then yes, that is what they're asking for. But in the other example, where they were conducting market research to the email for the JAG school, they sent me a performance work statement, and they did not want me to submit a quote. They just wanted to know whether or not I was available and capable of performing the task. They did not ask for quotes until they decided that they would set this contract aside for small business. So again, just like with any other solicitation, you want to make sure you are responding to the questions asked.
Okay.
Mr. Holohan, you have any questions?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, I really want to second what you said in terms of responding back. You got to remember, contracting officers are people, and they remember things. And if they reach out to you and you reach back and say, thanks for contacting me, but in this particular case, I can't meet it. But here's my capability statement in case you're interested in reaching out to me again. I mean, that's just good marketing, and that's just being a decent human being too. So I would definitely always do that because it has a lot to do with relationships in terms of what you're doing out here. I mean, in some cases, contracting officers have the authority to do a direct award.
Right. And we talked about that last time.
Okay, yeah, I don't remember where I was last week. I knew but I couldn't make it.
But everything that you're saying is really good information, and so it's good that they're hearing it from someone else who's out here making contact with these contracting officers and who has more experience in government contracting, because like I said, a lot of contracts, although most of the major contracts are always going to be published, there are a lot of low-hanging fruit type contracts. Remember, we talked about simplified acquisition thresholds and where people could make direct contract awards.
Right.
And so if you have established a relationship, remember, a part of this process is reaching out to your local contracting officers, participating in open houses, getting on lists, where they become familiar with you at different events and that kind of stuff. That's why we say that even in this class, a part of what you should be doing if you are seriously interested in government contracting is networking, right? Because like, if I'm not able to perform this, but I am working with the Office of Small Business Opportunity, and I have met other people in the program, and I know that some of you do various things. I even had someone share their capability statement with me after the last class, because remember I said there should be something in every class for everyone, but we're all at various stages of our contracting journey. So some people may be more, ahead than others, but there's always something to be gained from us sharing amongst each other. Okay. And so this is an excellent example of why it's important to establish those good relationships, because although I had never spoken to these people before, they now know who I am. They now know about my company, because I took the opportunity to market myself. Okay.
Yeah, if I could, let me just add one additional comment, because even though I wasn't here last week, you did talk about capability statements. I prepared a capability statement. My initial capability statement, I prepared as if it were a resume. In other words, keep it as short as I possibly could. And I sent it to the small business advocate for Naval Facility Engineering Command up in Norfolk. And he responded to it. He said, "Where's your long one?" I said, "I don't have a long one." He said, "Well, I want to see your long one." I'm going, okay. And so what he did, he was kind enough to send me, I think he sent me 3 long form resumes that he had from other companies, and I picked and chose, and I sent it on in. But that's when I got into the discussion with him about direct awards. And I have a mentor protege agreement with another engineering company, and the owner of that company has talked to me more than once about direct awards. But this was the first time I heard somebody from the contracting community use those terms. So while it's not happened to me yet, I am prepared to accept that if it happens. Okay.
Right. And remember, I talked about the fact that I had received a contract from the Department of the Army. That was a direct award contract. So these things do happen. And so your relationship with people, and you never know necessarily who has what connections to what contract or any of those things. So it's important to always put your best foot forward. Now I'm going to break from the slides, and you guys bear with me. I'm going to stop the screen share until I pull up a solicitation. So one of the things I wanted to do was show you, because we're going to compare these things when we talked about the federal forms, right? So I want to be able to show you the SF-33. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
So for those of you, who are brand new, this is one of the federal forms that the government uses. And you see, it just has basic information. This is that standard form. SF, whenever you see that on any government type thing, especially federal government, just stands for a standard form. And as you can see, this form, they'll put the contract number, solicitation number, whether it's a sealed bid, which is an IFB, or negotiated, which is an RFP. Remember, we talked about that. If you look back on the slides, when you get these slides, you'll be able to go back and see that. So this form will kind of state, exactly what the call of this contract was and what your, things that you might have to deliver and that kind of stuff. It's going to have the name and address of the offeror and that kind of thing. And remember, you're going to be required at the bottom. Let's see where it says name of contracting officer, type, or print. It says how payment will be made. It's just basic information. The reason I wanted to show you this is because when we look at the South Carolina cover page and page 2, I'm going to stop share and I'm going to pull up the SF-44, and I will also email these forms and all of these things to Ms. Rosenthal so that she can send them out with the slides, because I think it's good to have a point of reference. But when you look back and you look at those slides, and it tells you that, with the federal government for proposals, you have to submit a certain form and all these things and how it forms a binding contract. That's the SF-33. I'm now going to pull up the SF-1449. So you can see, again, it's going to be basic information. There is some differences in the contract, but the information itself is pretty standard. It's not hard to understand the form itself. So this is the federal SF-1449. Again, not hard to understand. The form itself is self-explanatory, right? Like it's just gonna put in the basic information here, but you see this acquisition here. You see in block 10, it's gonna specify whether or not this is like a set-aside contract. But again, it's just gonna say what you're gonna deliver and basic information. And then at the bottom, it's gonna be signature of authorized government representative on block 32. Remember, submitting your bid with this form means that once the government signs, there's a binding contract. Okay. I just wanted to, I'll stop share with those. And I'm going to now pull up a South Carolina solicitation, and this one that we're going to go through and look at the different sections. And you'll see that the South Carolina, this would have been a lot smoother in person, but we're gonna get through this. Okay. So I'm gonna go to, I have it pulled up, so I'm gonna share my screen here, and we're gonna look at where I talked about the South Carolina cover page and page 2. You guys see this?
Yes.
So this is an invitation for bid. Remember, we said that when you look at a government solicitation, it's going to tell you what it is. If you look at the very top under where it says State of South Carolina, it tells you exactly what it is. Remember, Mr. Hollahan also stated that the government solicitation would tell you like who the contracting officer is, who the agency is, the point of contact and that kind of information. Right next to the invitation for bid, you see to the right of that, the solicitation number. So that'll be the number that you reference anytime you make reference to this specific invitation for bid. The date issued, the procurement officer, contact information, all of that information should be available for you in the solicitation. It should not be, the government is not trying to hide any information from you because they want to get as responsive a bid as possible. Now you see what the description of services is, right? This is for janitorial services. And the reason I pulled this one is because I knew from the last class, we had people who were talking about pricing. And remember, pricing may vary depending on your specific industry. And also, there's some debate about what is the standard industry price in a specific area. One of the ways that you can learn what the government is willing to pay is by looking at what they've paid in the past, right? Looking at previous bids. We talked about how you do that for the federal government last time. You can go to a website that shows you all of the federal government spending. You can also like I said, contract awards are a matter of public information because this is your tax dollars paying for most of this stuff, right? So the government can't secretly pay some contractor $1 million with public funds and not report that, right? So I pulled this because this is already an awarded contract. And so in the next class, we will be able to work with folks to try to formulate a bid, like what would a reasonable bid be under the circumstances, so they get in the habit of understanding how to formulate that, but also you'll be able to see what the government actually paid, okay? Now, this is the cover page. You see right at the bottom of this page, it says cover page, online only. This is the cover page. Remember, just like at the SF 1449 and the SF 33, you're going to be required to sign, and submitting this on an invitation for a bid or a request for a proposal is going to constitute a binding contract. Now, remember I said you had to be properly registered with any government agency to do business with that agency. We talked about how you do that last class, and we talked about that was a requirement. Well, and we also talked about when you register, like when you register in SAM, you get assigned a cage code. You need to write that down, right? But when you register with the state of South Carolina, the state is going to issue your company a state vendor number. That information has to go on this page with your signature, okay? This is page 2, again, more general information. Mr. Hollahan referenced the fact that there may be amendments, and this is also a great solicitation for that because there are some amendments. So if you say found out about the solicitation on the first day, and then people ask questions because some things were ambiguous or, just some general questions, and the contracting officer issued additional answers, they issue those answers in writing as an amendment to this contract. Well, the requirement is that you acknowledge all amendments, because they do not want to have a situation where people say, oh, I didn't know about this, and so I want to protest this contract award because there was information out there that I didn't know about, right? So they make amendments public. They publish them publicly. That's why they publish answers to questions, and you are required to acknowledge all amendments to a solicitation, okay? So that's the page 1 and 2 of a South Carolina contract. This is the invitation for a bid. I've seen them use the same form for a request for a proposal. Anyone have any questions about page 1 and 2? And do you see how similar it is to the federal forms, and that it's a bunch of administrative data? Again, if you were just looking at this solicitation, if you see here on the page number at the top left, this is 43 pages, which can seem kind of overwhelming. And it's a bunch of, small print stuff and all that kind of stuff. But if you really just learn to understand the different sections of it, then you can digest it in small amounts and you can get through a bid easily, okay?
Ms. McCleary?
Yes.
Hi, I didn't see the little thing to raise my hand, but can I interject and ask and
Please,
mention something?
absolutely.
This is Gloria Tanner that's talking. I just want to make reference to the statement that you just made about the importance of acknowledging the addendum.
Mm-hmm.
If one signs a bid and don't acknowledge the amendment, however many the amendments went out, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, if you don't acknowledge that, that also can make your bid be non-responsive.
Exactly. If you do not do something that is required in a solicitation, then your bid is not responsive. Okay. So in the last class, we got a lot of questions about, okay, if I'm going to bid, can I, do I have to do it online? Do I have to do it in other formats? Can I deliver the paper bid to the office? All of that information, as you can see, there's a table of contents that goes with any solicitation. And so if you had questions about bidding, we go to section 2B. You see where it says online bidding instructions. And so the purpose of going through this is so that you see, although it can look overwhelming, it's a lot of information to digest. If you take it in small sections and look at the specific things, in accordance with the order that you probably need to break it down, you can definitely get through this. This is not something that is impossible to do. I believe anyone can be a government contractor. I mean, absolutely anybody. I personally think that. You can always also remember, get assistance with drafting proposals from, say, the Office of Small Business Opportunity, which provides consulting services. You can go to the Small Business Administration. Remember, you can go to your Small Business Development Center. You can also, somebody, I think it was Mr. Holohan, talked about having a mentor. So the Small Business Development Center and the Small Business Administration partners with an organization. I think they may have changed the name recently, but it was historically called the Service Corps of Retired Executives, which is, I mentioned in the last class, a group of professionals who have volunteered in various industries to serve as mentors for people who are working, to come up in those industries now. Mr. Holohan, you had your hand up?
I was just going to say SCORE still exists. It's a tremendous asset. You get a hold of them through SBA or your Pt.2.
Right. And I've partnered with SCORE, just like I've partnered with the SBA, and given all kinds of seminars and stuff to small businesses. Their services, just like the SBA, are free. So again, you want to take advantage of free resources, especially for most small businesses, which have smaller budgets and fewer resources in terms of people, because you're more limited in what you can do, especially when you're first starting out, because it takes a little while sometimes for businesses to actually become profitable. So there are all of these services, and I said in the last class, you've already paid for them because your tax dollars fund these programs for the federal government. So please take advantage of these programs. And the Office of Small Business Opportunity for your county in Richland County is a great example of a resource that you can use for this purpose. Okay. Now, this is instructions to offerers, which if you go back to when you get the slides, I know you don't have the slides now, and because we're not in person, I can't share that screen while we look at the solicitation. But when you get the slides, you'll see that I've broken down on the slide what each of these headings would be. But on the IFB, we're going to look at section 3 for South Carolina. Now, these are online bidding instructions. And it talks about mandatory registration, but remember, you cannot bid on a contract in South Carolina if you are not a registered vendor with the state of South Carolina. So remember, every government agency will have its own registration requirements. So you have federal, you have state, you have local, which includes your municipalities, your county, and it also includes other branches under the municipal government, such as your school district, which may fall under your county's purchasing process, but they may have their own registration requirements or own requirements for procurement that you would still have to abide by. So remember, we talked about that last time as well, but that information is going to be here. There's no way that you could understand that vendor registration is optional, because like I said, the government tells you exactly what you have to do in its solicitation. And as you can see here in section 2, these are the instructions for becoming a vendor. Okay. Now, scope of work. I specifically want to talk to combat cleaning. Are you there?
Sorry, my unmute was acting up, but yes.
No problem. Okay, so you see this scope of work?
Yes.
Okay, so you see the South Carolina Department of Transportation is soliciting for janitorial services for their Holly Hill maintenance office, their maintenance shop, the break room and restrooms. They tell you when you're going to have to perform services. So you got to perform services twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays during the normal business hours, right?
Okay.
Now, no cleaning will be performed on state holidays. And they tell you where you can find the schedule for state holidays. It tells you that South Carolina DOT will supply paper, toilet paper, paper towels, hand soap, and trash liners, and they will supply cleaning materials for the first year of the contract. So when you're looking at a contract like this, because remember we talked about when you were talking about your pricing, and then I think, sir, I can't remember your name. Can you tell me your name, the other gentleman who was in the similar cert?
Hosea.
Mr. Hosea, okay.
Mhm.
So Mr. Hosea, you guys were talking about how, your pricing is going to vary because there's an industry standard per square foot maybe, but what each individual, where you find your cleaning supplies and how much you pay based on, say, economies of scale. Let's say you're able to buy wholesale and buy lots of cleaning supplies and you have storage for that versus a smaller enterprise that can only buy in small lots, and so their supplies may be a little bit more expensive. Remember that in order for you to determine what your profit is, it's going to depend on what your overhead is, right? So this is a contract that is for 5 years, because we can see that the contractor shall buy cleaning supplies, materials, and equipment for the remaining years 2 through 5. The first year, South Carolina Department of Transportation is going to let you use what they have on site. So they're going to provide that. Right?
In combat cleaning, I also have a contact. I have your contact, but I also have a contact for a material guy that could get paper towels, everything that's cleaning, even if you need push carts and all that stuff. So
Oh,
I'll
wow.
contact y'all
Okay.
later with that information as well.
So
Okay, thank you.
that's an excellent networking opportunity here for the two of you guys. But what it also tells you is that so the first year they're going to provide you with the supplies. So what are you really pricing for them for the first year?
Labor,
right? So your cost of labor is primarily what's going to drive your contract bid for the first year. But for the next years, you have to provide all of the supplies. Now look at the sentence that comes under that. You shall not leave your cleaning supplies on Holly Hill premises. So what does that mean? If you are, say, if you're, say, a home business, right? You got to have a place to store cleaning supplies. Now, does that mean that you need to buy your cleaning supplies for the entire year, which means that you'll need more storage space than, maybe someone who is able to get it delivered, in increments as the supplies expire? That's going to depend on the individual business, right? Do you have space already where you can hold up to a year's worth of cleaning supplies to meet this contract? Now, you don't know that yet because you don't know what the cleaning supplies are yet because you haven't even looked at the rest of the requirements and what you have to clean. But this is how you start to figure out how you're going to price yourself. You got to understand what it is you have to do and what exactly, that overhead is, right? So look at the square foot. Remember I said that industry standards are going to drive some of your pricing depending on, what you are supplying to the government. So if the maintenance office building and oil room, which consists of 3 offices, the oil room, which has a separate entrance and 2 restrooms inside and 1 restroom outside, is a total of 1,152 square feet. How are you going to price that? By the industry standard for square feet or do you have some other mechanism that will dictate your price? Maybe it depends on whether or not, like it says down here, for the maintenance office and building and shop, what do you have to do? You got to sweep all the tile, mop all the floors. So maybe it depends on how many square feet you have to sweep versus mop, right? Maybe in your industry, the price for sweeping 1,000 square feet is going to be different for the price for, say, mopping and disinfecting 1,000 square feet of floor, right? Maybe there's some difference in the, the amount of labor with respect to level of exertion of an employee or something. But this is why you want to look at your industry standards. You want to talk to mentors, and you want to also go and look at what the government has paid for similar services in the past, right? So if you have to, how will you know if that 1,152 square feet is carpet or if it's hardwood floors? How will you know?
During the meeting or walkthrough?
Yeah, a walkthrough, exactly.
Yeah. So if we go back to the first page, I don't know if you guys noticed that, but this is why it's important to understand that the solicitation is going to have everything that you need to know. On the first page, you see where it says conference type. The government will always tell you whether or not there will be an opportunity for you to visit the premises. It says conference type site visit, date and time on the 11th of August at 11 a.m. Location, you'll be able to come on site to that location and walk the premises. Now, who are you going to send to walk your premises? Someone
You
who
go
understands.
yourself, or somebody who's knowledgeable, or you yourself.
Someone who's knowledgeable, right? Yeah, so you yourself, if you are the person who is the most knowledgeable about the premises, but let's say I am partnered with a contractor who is going to do demolition work. Now, I'm not an expert on demolition work, and there's a site visit and I have to go, and maybe there's all kind of industry requirements, such as determining if asbestos is present and has to be removed from the premises before demolition. I need to send the person who is best qualified to visit that site and make these types of determinations, because those are the types of determinations that will drive my bid, right? So combat cleaning, who are you sending to your site visit?
It would be me and my husband.
You and your husband, okay. And what are you looking for when you go into your site visit?
Looking for what the type of floors, so floors that have to be vacuumed versus mopped, or if it's like a specialty like slate tile or granite, or really large windows or high windows, or like vaulted ceilings, so we know that we have to bring like the extenders, like the regular vacuum, or if we need to do like a backpack vacuum. If there's steps, any like large amounts of mold. So if the building is a new construction versus if it's, been sitting still for a while or hasn't had a good cleaning for a while. And yeah, just looking for like the types of products we would need, and the areas, and whether there's a lot of polishing or glass and stuff like that.
Okay. Now, what if this contract, do I have any IT people here? No IT? What other industries do we have?
Transportation and logistics.
Transportation and logistics. Okay. So what if, let's see, I'm trying to see how I can relate that to this particular contract. I may not be able to relate that one necessarily to this particular contract. Does anyone provide any on-site other services or anything? Because what if this was
Lawn care?
I think I
I'm
get
sorry?
where you're going with this. I think.
Yeah, because what if this was for a contract for someone to come in and install like some cable for some high-speed IT stuff, and the approximate square footage of the building, but there are other things that you would need to know in that industry to know to drive your bid, right? So this is why people who are in the same industry, performing the same work, who are responding to the same contract, come to different numbers, right? So there's a range of numbers that are probably going to be, with it plus or minus within a certain thing. And then there may be some people who are total outliers way below, because a lot of times, unfortunately, and I can show you an example of this as well, people will just try to get their foot in the door, and they may price themselves very, very low. And if they're otherwise responsive and an otherwise responsible bidder, they may still get that contract. They may not make a profit. And in fact, they may not even maintain the contract, because it may drive them out of business, especially if they're a new business and they don't really understand how to price themselves. And then you'll have people who are like, I never get a contract. I'm always way above bid. And it may be because they need some mentorship related to that specific industry's pricing. Or, unfortunately, sometimes if you're very, very small, or you don't have economies of scale with respect to getting your supplies, sometimes where I'm getting my supplies may mean that I'm just not a competitive bidder.
Ms. McCleary?
Yes.
Hi, Ms. Gloria again. I'm sorry, have to interject. I don't see the hand to raise it, so I'll just ask the question.
Please, by all means.
The point that you just made, I just want to maybe emphasize it's extremely important for either construction services or professional services to request to be debriefed if you are not successful when you submit your bid. Because that way you will know, as you just mentioned, where you came short and how to improve that bid the next time. But also what that debriefing does is sort of make you aware of where you are if you're in a professional services or consulting capacity, what you need to do to improve. Now, I've experienced not being successful a couple of times. The agency just did not even respond back to make us aware who was a successful firm. We just never heard back from them after submitting a response to a RFP. And after doing this 3 times with the same agency, I followed through. Although you're busy, you have to request to be debriefed to know what happened. But during that debriefing session, they identified that our firm was ranked the highest company. So naturally, the next question was, why was the contract not awarded to us? Well, internally, with their own financing, they decided with their budgets to do something else with the money of the budget initially budgeted for that particular opportunity. So that also makes us aware that some agencies, you don't want to submit your bid or submit a bid because it can be time-consuming and costly. Responding to an RFP, RFQ in some cases, you can look at anywhere from 2 to 5 days, sometimes even longer period of time, depending on the size of the opportunity. And if you're talking a week or 2 weeks to develop a response, that could be thousands of dollars. And to not only just labor hours, but also submitting hard copy proposals. Some agencies will require 5 or 7 or sometimes 10 copies of your response to disseminate internally for individuals that will be reviewing those packages. Now, again, you spending thousands of dollars responding to these opportunities, and for that to happen 3 or 4 times, that's $15,000, $20,000 to be notified of that opportunity. So it's always extremely important to request to be debriefed. And especially also with construction or janitorial services or whatever the case might be, whatever the service might be, because that gives you a baseline for you to know where I am and what I need to do to improve my costs higher or lower. I've also seen situations where, as you just mentioned, companies will attempt to lowball a bid just to get in to get the contract. Well, then what's the purpose of being in business if you're not going to make a profit? That's one thing. And then the next thing is some companies try to strategize to say, I'll low bid this job and come back in 3 months and request for an increase in cost. Well, most agencies won't do that.
And that's not how the government works.
That's right. You are stuck with the price in most cases of what you submitted. But there are some instances, if you bid a job and you're the low bidder and your bid is a little bit lower than others, but you happen to have made a mistake or an error by not including a particular line item, they still will have your bid bond for that, and you will lose out. They'll make you do the work for whatever that lower cost is. They or the agency or the owner, or they'll have your bid bond for wasting their time, and then you still lose. So where you see firms that attempt to play the game of low bid going in and increase the cost, that doesn't happen too often in this day and time. In the older days, some agencies, state agencies will accept that. Now, not federal government, but state government, I've seen that happen. I've seen a couple of companies that will low bid the job strategizing just to get in. And then if the bid is under a certain dollar amount, hypothetical, if it's less than $25,000 or less than $49,000, some agencies in the state they allow the procurement director to increase the bid or award a contract without going to their boards or their commissions. And so some firms try to take that and strategize and say, okay, I'll low bid the job, and then the procurement director will increase the cost. Well, that doesn't happen too much these days. So I just wanted to emphasize it's extremely important to be debriefed, to allow your firm to know where your shortcomings were and how to improve.
And that's also why it's important to understand that when you submit that bid, if the government accepts it, that's a binding contract. So you're on the hook. So make sure that the bid that you have submitted is reasonable for your firm, because the government does not care necessarily if you don't make a profit. Okay. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Tony.
Hi, in regards to that, with the recent, because of COVID, driving prices or increase in driving some prices out of the roof, lumber and timber had increased. So in a case of you bidding on a contract for, you know, a year or so ago, no one anticipating that lumber was going to increase as it is, are procurement officers willing to make those adjustments? It's something that can be verified, you know.
There are some legal, there is some legal leeway with respect to things like that, specifically things that are beyond the control of, you know, the traditional market stuff, where consideration can be given. Yes. Remember, I talked about the federal acquisition regulation. There's also the states have acquisition regulations. If state or federal funding is used on a contract, you know, then that contract may fall under the federal rules for how these acquisition laws apply. But the state also has their own acquisition laws and rules. And so there is some consideration to be had for that kind of stuff. But if you're going into the contract, if you were bidding on this contract today, and you understood that those conditions existed today, then you need to make sure you have incorporated those conditions in your bid. Okay.
Okay.
Now, this is where, like, qualifications, I just went over this. This is for information for offerers to submit. I think on that other slide, I, you know, put on there that, you know, there may be miscellaneous information that's required. Minority participation statement is one of those types of forms. I will briefly pull up a copy of a solicitation that I have submitted to the state on a successful contract. I don't typically share many of my things, but I'll show you that these things are included. So this particular form on the solicitation that I prepare, because remember I said that whether you're doing online or submitting the bid in person, specifically because we're talking about the state of South Carolina's IFB right now, you would have a automated portion in the online bidding system that you would fill out that almost just relates to, for each contract line item or CLIN, what your bid is for that contract line item. But all of the supporting documentation, for instance, if you were a certified minority business, if you are talking about the qualifications here, where it talks about the qualifications and they tell you, you know, that you need to submit certain things, all of those things will be submitted as an attachment. And what I do is I create a PDF that is responsive to all of these things, and I break it down the way that they have their sections labeled on the solicitation. I follow their guide so that it's easy for them to find in my PDF where specific things are. So if qualifications is in section 5 here, then my section 5 in my PDF is going to be qualifications, and it's going to be responsive to anything that they ask me in this bid. Okay. Let's see. Trying to think of specific things that might just jump out to you. Special terms and conditions, contract modification, adjustment of price or time of performance. All of these things are things that you need to be familiar with and understand, because like you said, you want to make sure that you understand how these things, you know, operate, is specifically for the state of South Carolina, because state rules and federal rules can be different. Just like If it's local funding being used from a local municipality, then they may not necessarily be following to the T the state rules for solicitations. Local municipalities can have their own procurement process for contracts that are awarded using local funds. And so all of these things are things you want to understand. If the contractor is required to have any insurance, that information should be in the solicitation, because in order for you to know if you can submit a responsive bid, or in order for you to make sure that you're able to comply with the government's requirements, the government has to tell you what those requirements are. So you see here on page 24, contractor's liability insurance. This is typically driven by the industry standard as well. So these are just things that you need to know, because if you're currently, say, doing janitorial services, but you do not have professional liability insurance that would meet the general requirements in your industry, and specifically for the state of South Carolina, if you're trying to contract with the state of South Carolina, then you need to know that, right? So there's a lot of information in here. I know that we're over 12 o'clock already, but what I wanted to do was I wanted to present this because I wanted us to look at this. I also, if y'all will bear with me, I'll pull up another one to show you a request for proposal for, I believe, the city of Holly Hill. And you'll see that the format might be different, but any solicitation is going to have all of this information in there, going to tell you exactly what you need. Okay, hold on one second. I'll stop the share for this, and I'll start to share for the Holly Hill RFP. This is kind of difficult to do in a Zoom because it's the kind of thing like you really want to be able to go through, analyze, ask questions. And I know you don't have these documents in front of you, but if we understand the general nature of a request for a proposal or an invitation for a bid. So this is a request for a proposal. This is for ground maintenance. Do we have any people in here who do grounds maintenance or lawn care or any of those types of things? I know that this is short notice, but this one is still open. The due date for this one is not until the 27th. Remember, I said that there are federal contracts available, state contracts available, government contracts available with your county, and then there are municipal contracts available, and you have to go to each one of those procurement websites to figure out what's available, for those specific areas. There are all types of government contracts around here. Now, in order to bid on this contract, you see where it says mandatory pre-proposal meeting. In order to even be qualified to bid on this contract, not only do you have to be qualified as a contractor with the city of Holly Hill, which means you have to go to their procurement website and figure out what the registration requirements are, but you have to have attended a mandatory pre-proposal meeting that was held on January 13th, right? And that's probably to make sure that people are serious, and so that they don't have people coming back and saying, oh, like you said, they're trying to negotiate these prices, or they're playing this game because they did not come and inspect. Normally at pre-proposal meetings, they will answer any questions that are outstanding, and you have an opportunity to actually physically observe the premises, so that you understand, okay, if I have to perform certain grounds maintenance, depending on how the landscaping is, I may need certain equipment. I may need a zero turn here, but I can only use a handheld device here to get like close in these edges, and depending on what those specific requirements are. And so you won't know that if you don't go and look at the premises. Okay. Again, it's going to tell you everything that you need. See where it says provide 3 identical paper copies of the proposal. So in this case, we know that just submitting a bid online is not enough, right? Always look to your solicitation for the specifics of what you need in order to generate a responsive bid. Even if you had the best bid that they're going to receive, if you only submit 1 paper copy, are you responsive to this solicitation? No. So your bid probably won't be considered because they require 3 identical paper copies of the proposal. And like Ms. Tanner said, that means that you have to take the time to not only prepare the proposal, but you have to prepare the 3 identical copies, which may, depending on the length of your proposal and the information that you're presenting, you're going to incur some out-of-pocket costs for that. And so you want to make sure that when you're considering bidding, you go through the solicitation and you look, because if you already know that there's a requirement in here that is going to put too much of a burden on you or that you cannot comply with. For instance, if you just came across this proposal today and you haven't been through the mandatory conference, can you bid? Can you even submit a responsive bid? No. And so all of these things matter. For the next class, what I want to do is, again, I want us to start thinking about industry standards, and we're going to go through bidding exercises and actually preparing costs. So if there's a proposal that someone has that they want to bring with them, because you're formulating a bid for a contract that you intend to bid on, or if you just want to use some general examples that I'll present in the next class, we want to help people with the bidding exercise. Remember, I said that for standard things, you can have sheets. For instance, if for mopping, if it's X amount per square foot, you can prepare an Excel spreadsheet where you just plug in the numbers for that square feet that will punch out to you what that labor cost might be. And then you just have to add in your additional costs. But this is how you have to go through the exercise in order to be able to effectively bid. So I know I'm over, and I know I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Wade, who I see her hand is up. And so.
Denisha, one thing I wanted to just kind of insert, when you talked about showing up for those mandatory pre-bids, I've heard of agencies actually using you showing up as a way of verifying your good faith efforts.
Yes.
I've seen that happen before. So what I mean by that, if there are utilization goals set on certain projects, the prime may say, hey, I wasn't able to find a small local business. I wasn't able to find a DBE within that scope. So the question may be, first of all, did you attend the pre-bid? Second of all, did you network with any of the small and local businesses that was there? Did you find out if there were any DBEs? Sometimes some agencies may have outreach events after the pre-bid, after they go through the solicitations. Then, I know with us personally, we would always ask, are there any SLBEs in the room? That way the prime will be able to know who can I partner with to be a sub on a certain project. So now if they come back and say, hey, I wasn't able to find a SLBE, like I said, we will refer back to that pre-bid. We say, hey, there were 5, 6 of them in the room. You had the opportunity to network. Then you can say, yes, I did meet my good faith efforts because I spoke to each and every one of those SLBEs that was in the room, but nobody was available or nobody can do the type of work that I needed. So us who's looking at that can say, okay, check, good faith efforts was met. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate that when we're talking about showing up for pre-bids. And also that, like I said, it's a time to network. You need to take every opportunity to network. Prime example, a prime may not be able to use you on that particular project, but it may be something that may come down the line later on, and they may remember that conversation that they may have had with you during that pre-bid. Bring your capability statements, bring your business cards, stay in contact with those prime contractors, because you just never know. Like I always say, the no may not be a final no, it may be just not right at this moment. So
exactly.
Just wanted to reiterate.
Exactly. I know that we're 10 minutes over. I appreciate everyone's patience. Again, going through solicitations not in person is a little bit more challenging, but I'm glad that we had the opportunity to do that. I hope that it helped someone at least start to figure out how to start to break down the solicitation, to look at the requirements and how those requirements impact their pricing decisions. In next week's class, we're going to take this same solicitation and we're going to go through preparing a responsive bid. So if somebody wants to use the solicitation, again, I'm going to send it out to Ms. Rosenthal. She can send it out to you guys, and you can go ahead and start to look at it so you can identify the portions of it that are mandatory. But if you are in a different industry and you want to practice something on your industry and you find a solicitation, then bring that with you, because the exercise is the same regardless of what your industry is. You know, it's just a matter of understanding how to break it down and the things that you're looking for to begin to develop a good pricing scheme. But I know from the first class, we specifically had janitorial discussions about pricing. And so this is why I wanted to use this exercise. And also, like I said, it's already awarded. So we can look at what the government ended up paying to see whether or not our janitorial companies in here might have been in the ballpark, or whether they might have needed to request a debrief with the government to figure out how to better prepare their pricing next time. Anyone have any questions of me? I'll stay on for another 5 or 10 minutes or however long is necessary.
Ms. McClary, I just want to know when we'll get access to the passcode for the SBA link that you sent to us.
I will share it with Ms. Rosenthal once I have a chance to go back and look at the recording information. I'll share it with Ms. Rosenthal and along with the slides and all of the information that she sends out. So if you guys go ahead and copy that link. In fact, I'll just send the link out again with the passcode information. Because that is I thought that was a great presentation by Mr. Frank Anderson of the SBA. He's actually out of Columbia, South Carolina. So if you guys find it helpful, he's a retired military guy. He's a lending specialist. I think he does some specialty with veterans as well. And again, these are resources that your tax dollars already pay for. So if you find that you want to reach out to Mr. Anderson, his contact information is there and he is local to you guys.
Excellent. Thank you.
And also, if you look in the chat box right next to the little smiley face emoji, there are 3 dots. Go ahead and you can save the chat, because I know in the beginning we all put our business information, contact information in that. So if there was anybody on the call that you probably wanted to connect with after this, you will have their contact information, or you can just call our office again, 576-1540. Does anybody else have any more questions before we wrap up this session? If not, I just want to say thank you to everybody. This has been really good, really informative. Again, we will send out the slides and also a copy to this link, or you can just go to the Richmond County's YouTube page. By Monday, we should have this uploaded. It will be the name of the class. So you just look for the date and you will be able to see this over and over again. If we don't have any other questions, oh, one more thing, please watch your emails based on if weather permits. We can't control Mother Nature, but if weather permits, we will be back in person at the convention center. Also, if you have not registered for next week's class, I strongly advise you to go ahead and register, because space is limited due to the size of the room. So if you don't have any more questions, again, be safe, enjoy your afternoon, enjoy the little bit of snow that we still have out on the grounds, and I will see you guys on next Saturday. Thank you. Don't forget to click on the 3 dots next to the emoji in the chat, and you'll be able to save the chat and get everybody's contact information that was shared in the chat. Thank you. Have a good afternoon. Ms. McCleary and Osbo staff, can y'all remain on for just a few minutes, please?
Yes, we
No
still have
problem.
participants hanging on.
Right.
Can you stop the recording?